So welcome back to our last panel on the security and the mutual support between Ukraine and the EU. So it's a panel that is dedicated explicitly to the issue of the security. And it is already for quite a while that we in the Kyiv dialogue also not only focusing on local democracy, on working with the partners in the regions, but that we also try to cover the security aspects. And you have seen that over the entire day and also in the agenda, that the resilience and the security is always something we want to talk about and we want to also include in our discussions. But now we want to explicitly focus on the security aspects. And the idea is not only to see what is missing in Ukraine, how the EU support can be or should be additional what is already there, but also on the other side, what can we from the European Union side learn from what happens in Ukraine, what Ukraine is doing, and what is maybe missing also on our end here. And we also talked about that today already when it comes to resilience in the European Union member states. So I hand over to Wilfried Jilge, our expert on security, also board member of Kyiv Dialogue, and let's start.
Yeah, hello, dear colleagues, to our final panel on security and mutual support between Ukraine and Europe. We will speak about, let me say, three basic questions. Where are the current gaps in the European Union's and Europe's assistance to Ukraine's security? How can cooperation between Ukraine and the EU develop in the industrial military dimension and maybe in favor of both sides, which is also important? And last but not least, for me also the important question, what lessons learned from Ukraine are possible in terms of rapid and effective procurement, but also what lessons learned, because we are a civil society forum, when it comes to the engagement of civil society and expert community to push even for reforms in the defense sector, because we have here also very important achievements. And I think against to the background, what happened in Ukraine in the last month, that is also important to know. At first, I would like to introduce our panelists here. At first, I would like, on my left, to introduce Julia Maroszewska. She is the head of the Reforms Support Office at the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and an expert in governance, anti-corruption and strategic development. She gained recognition for implementing comprehensive anti-corruption reforms as a head of the Odessa Customs and later led initiatives to strengthen transparency in the defense sector as a co-chair of the Independent Defense Anti-Corruption Committee, NACCO. Maroszewska's background includes positions as a research scholar at Stanford University and studying at the Global Executive Master of Public Administration program in New York University and I think University of California. And I'm very happy to have you with us. Thank you, Julia, for being with us. I would like to welcome online in Kiev, Alexander Mereshko. Hello, Alexander, chairman of the Foreign Affairs and Interparliamentary Ties Committee of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine and member of the political party Servant of the People. He is a professor and doctor of law in international law, namely in such areas as international public law, international diplomatic law, international treaties, European law, very important, and international economic law and organizations. Thank you, Alexander, for being with us. Yeah, of course. I would like also to introduce Alexei Dorohan from the organization Better Regulation Delivery Office, BRDO. He is the head of the office and a leading Ukrainian expert in policy, law, digital transformation with over a decade of experience managing and implementing large-scale government digitalization projects while shaping the country's legislative and regulative landscape. And you also have, and you're also leading that, a defense group or a defense platform in the BRDO. You are also advising on the defense sector, and you are actually one of the persons we would like to have here. Thank you very much, Alexei, for joining us. And now I have to look because I have to. Because and we have Łukasz Maślanka from the OSW, the Polish think tank in Warsaw, a leading think tank in security. Łukasz is an expert on, I think, European security, also specialized on security of France, and he will look at the questions from the point of view of European Union, what is necessary and what is possible from the side of European Union. I would like to begin at the beginning, nevertheless, with Mr. Mereshko. I would like to tell you that Mr. Mereshko has to leave after 30 minutes because he has another session, I think, in Parliament. The same is a little bit true for Julia. She will be with us to the formal end of the panel, but she has clearly to leave at 17:30 because she has to join, she has to go to the airport for the next conference. So, so I would like to begin, and I think if we speak about security, we cannot avoid to speak shortly about the currently situation on the front in Ukraine. Mr. Mereshko, I would like to ask you, we see the developments in Pokrovsk, that Russia maybe is making more advances than before, but not very big advances. And what is maybe also a little bit concerning is that in the shadow of Pokrovsk, Russia is also advancing in the south, in Zaporizhia Oblast, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. So how do you see the situation? And from your point of view, what would be your message to the European partners? What is needed actually now? Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. Thank you for inviting me. For me, it's a huge privilege to talk to you about the most important things regarding the fight for our survival and our security. Well, yes, we should remember that when we are talking about Russian aggression against Ukraine, we are talking about some, well, analysts call it asymmetric conflict, others call it the war of attrition. But when we're talking about the war of attrition, we should understand, we should keep in our mind that the situation is getting more and more difficult. Economically speaking, militarily speaking, and of course, situation at the front right now is difficult, especially when we're talking about Pokrovsk. But the thing is that Putin was planning to take Pokrovsk more than 2 years ago, and he failed. His initial plan was to take at least what we call Donbass, those regions, those oblasts like Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast. And so far, he has failed to do it. That's why, despite all the difficulties, despite the fact that Russian troops are inside Pokrovsk, but so far, Russian troops have failed to take it. We continue to fight, and we understand that situation can be developing in different kind of direction, and there is a danger that Russian troops will completely destroy Pokrovsk. And maybe at some point we might have to take decision to withdraw or not to withdraw our troops. So we should be realistic about that. But so far, we continue to fight and we continue to repel Russian attacks. The thing is that according to some estimates of military analysts, if Russian troops will be advancing at this pace at which they advance right now, it will take them 5 years to occupy Donetsk Oblast. So, which means that Putin thinks that time is on his side, but in reality, it's not on his side. And we might be reaching a tipping point when time will be on the side of Ukraine. And for Russia, Russian troops have bogged down in the territory of Ukraine. And at certain point, time can be on the side of Ukraine. So we have to continue to fight. We are on the defensive. From military perspective, to be on the defensive is easier. According to some estimates, Russians are losing lots of soldiers, and the ratio is 5 to 1. 5 to 1. So Russia is losing much more troops. At the same time, talking about security and the European Union, there are two things which I would like to mention. The first of all, when we're talking about the gap, to me, you know, for 3.5 years, even more right now, Ukraine has been paying huge price in terms of human lives for defense of Europe. And 3.5 years was more than enough for Europe, for the European Union to develop a very advanced military industrial complex. Because economically, Europe is a giant and Russia economically cannot compare with Europe. Unfortunately, we see some progress, of course, but it could have been done much more in terms of development of economic, military, industrial, and security capabilities in Europe. That's why I think that this is the biggest problem. And the last point which I would like to make, and I consider to be crucial, because, you know, I'm looking at the whole situation from the perspective of the issue, how to save Ukraine and what can be done. For me and for many of my colleagues, the best solution which could stop Russian aggression is immediate Ukraine membership in NATO. I firmly believe that if Ukraine would join NATO tomorrow, it would stop Putin because he's scared of NATO. He's scared. He cannot cope with one country, Ukraine, and he understands that he will not be able to win any war against NATO countries, 32 states. So it would be the best solution for Ukraine. But under the circumstances, I call it the second best solution would be Ukraine's membership in the European Union. Again, for me, it's not economic issue. It's not even political issue. It's first and foremost security issue. It's an issue of survival of Ukraine. That's why I even think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that if Ukraine were a member of the European Union before, Putin would not take a risk to invade Ukraine. Because for him, it would be a war not only against one country, it would be a war against 28, a quasi-federation, let me put it this way. A good example is Finland. It was not NATO member, but it was member of the European Union. The thing is that Putin is afraid of most of all solidarity. Solidarity between within Euro-Atlantic community, solidarity within European Union. That's why, to me, I understand this. We're talking about negotiating process, opening clusters, and so on. But I think that Europe should take this serious political decision. Yes, it is, first of all, political decision to admit Ukraine to the European Union as soon as possible. And it would help us, really help. And the chances are that it might stop Russian aggression. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I will later, I hope in time, come back to you. I think what you said is also in the direction that the Europeans have to give the message that the support for Ukraine is very clear for the next 3 to 5 years. I think that is very important, that Putin knows he cannot destabilize and not bring divisions in that support. And therefore, we want to speak now in our discussion how to put that support in a better cooperation in the military and security field, let me say, not only on a large scale, but also on a permanent basis. And therefore, Julia, I would like to ask you, what steps maybe and reforms have to be still undertaken in Ukraine supporting states and in Ukraine itself as well to improve arms cooperation so that Ukraine can benefit from it as quickly as possible in its current defensive fight? And what are the key areas here for you to focus on?
Thank you so much for your question and for the invitation to speak here. It's a great honor for me. So I'm representing the Reform Support Office of the Ministry of Defense, and one of the core reforms that we worked on since 2023 is the procurement reform. So if you remember, we had this big eggs scandal in Ukraine, which actually started the procurement reform in the defense. And the role of my office was to launch a new non-lethal procurement agency, which is called DOT, which basically brought a new approaches to the Ukrainian defense procurement. During the first year, they saved almost 1 billion hryvnias to the Ukrainian budget due to the more modernized procurement procedures. And currently, there is a new tool, which is called .chain, is being implemented. So that's a tool that allows brigades to procure drones and electronic warfare on an online marketplace. So as a brigade commander, you can enter the website and you can choose. You have a budget that you can spend, and you can choose what type of drones you need for your brigade, and they will be delivered to you from the delivery process now is like from 5 days to 2 months. It depends on what you are procuring. So I started mentioning you this approaches to procurement because that's something that we've been asked a lot from our EU partners about. Because if you will think about how the procurement currently looks in Germany, for example, that will be a very different model. And if we are talking about being prepared and the readiness of the nation, the procurement cycle, which takes months and years, will not be sustainable for the real warfare. Another thing that is also being looked pretty closely at is the decentralized procurement. That's also the direct procurement of the brigades, but on the budget of the brigades. Currently, every Ukrainian brigade every brigade/military unit have 150 million hryvnias that can be spent plus, so it can be much more. It can be 500,000 hryvnias yearly that can be spent on the direct procurement. What is so special about it? And that's something that no other nation in the world has. So our brigades can procure equipment, so drones and other things, which are not licensed or certified by the Ministry of Defense. So basically, something was built in a garage, and the brigade commander thinks that that can be efficient and save lives for his unit. And he, or I want to say he or she, but we are not yet there. So, and he can test that at the front line and buy these drones or EW for his unit. And that, like billions of hryvnias, actually now it's more than 1 billion euros that was spent for the direct procurement, developed Ukrainian industry. So you don't have to fight for licensing and certification. You can test at the front line your equipment first, and then when it's proven, it will go up to the centralized procurement, and then you will get like much bigger contracts. But still, there is space for the market to develop. That's something that our nations, our partner nations, are looking at. So we are transferring these lessons learned through NATO, through the JETEC Center. Hopefully, it will be adapted in the EU countries. From our side, what we should be looking at in terms of defense reforms, it is still two main directions that we as the Reform Support Office are looking at. First, it's a human-centric approach in the armed forces, which includes a lot of elements to it, from the recruitment, training, HR policies, and a lot of other components. And other is the technological development. So that's everything that goes with the, digitalization, better system for the manufacturers, for the industry, and so on.
But human-centric approach means also better preparation for the people, yes?
Definitely, training,
to make the people or to empower the people to better follow the technological development, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Łukasz from the Eastern European Institute in Warsaw. What we now learned here from Julia means that in Ukraine you have a horizontal procurement. So you have a procurement without additional and overburdening bureaucratic steps of decision making. Is that, at first, is that really to imagine that European states can implement that? And what are for you, from your point of view, with your special accentuation on the European needs, what can be taken from these experiences from Ukraine? And also maybe if you have something from Poland, because Poland is already also working, of course, with Ukraine, yes?
Yeah, to some extent, I think that we can implement it. For example, in Poland, we have territorial defense forces, which are it's kind of horizontal army. So there are people who go to work normally, but when it's a necessity, they are gathering and they make something, for example, in terms of civil defense, or they make exercises. So I think that this decentralized procurement is a very good idea for such forces. When it comes to regular army, I fear that this would be very difficult because regular forces work within NATO, and NATO is quite a hugely bureaucratized institution that has its needs of standardization, etc., etc. So I think that this would be more complicated. For the European Union, I think that much has been done since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So we have now two programs, SAFE and EDIP, in which Ukraine can take part. And I think this will be a kind of litmus test to which extent member states and European institutions are ready to cooperate with Ukraine. I would hope that some member states that don't feel directly threatened by Russia will use a SAFE program to make some acquirements for Ukraine in their defense industry. So yesterday or before yesterday, President Zelensky was in Paris. There were some important deals made between France and Ukraine, and I hope that one of sources of financing of the acquirements Ukraine wants to make at the French industry will be the SAFE program. EDIP is a program that can help to make Ukrainian defense industry and the European defense industry to cooperate better together, because it offers some money for some investment, for example, regarding the access to raw materials. And going back to Poland, I think that we have some good examples of cooperation between our countries, between Poland and Ukraine. The first one is the company WB Electronics, which produces drones and which has its own factory in Ukraine, which is now producing drones in Ukraine, for example, iFlies, drones that are used by Ukrainian army. And the second example is our state group PGZ, which is implementing program of reparation of post-Soviet equipment Poland gave to Ukraine in 2022. So the service of this equipment is realized both in Ukraine and in Poland. And the last aspect about which I would like to tell now is the training of Ukrainian soldiers. So the European Union is realizing the huge training missions, EUMAM Ukraine, on the European territory, so on the territory of European Union, mainly in Poland, in Germany, and in France. And I hear many contrasting opinions about the efficacy of these missions, and I would like to have gathered military experts, soldiers, officers to discuss very seriously how this mission should be executed furtherly.
Yeah, that is a very good, I think, good thing, because we had also discussions and also statements from people on the ground from Ukraine, that these trainings sometimes, for example, do not on a regular basis include the work with drones or with advanced technologies in the war. So I think that would be a very good idea. A little question on the SAFE program. I mean, how it should be maybe improved in order to more stimulate Ukraine's participation, and secondly, is the strategic coordination of what the single states are doing, also when it comes to have to take into account readiness, so preparedness for very sensitive gaps we still have, so readiness, and also strategic preview in a sense, because of course that project will fund something, but this project will need time. So there should be also a strategic coordination, also when it comes to security guarantees, yes? Taking it from the land defense until the maritime defense. Can you imagine here what should be maybe improved, that it is not only a funding for single projects? Thank you.
So for the first question, I think that the stimulus is quite good for as I said, countries that are not directly threatened by Russia, because countries like Poland, Finland, Baltic countries will primarily buy for the need of their defense armed forces. But if I were Italy or Spain, so country which is distant from Russia but has a quite significant defense industry, I think it would be a very good idea to buy something for Ukraine in Spanish and Italian defense industry. So I think the stimulus is quite important, because this borrowing in the framework of SAFE program is quite interesting when it comes to interest rates for countries like Spain and Italy. And the second question, now the member states are preparing to create the coalitions, capacity coalitions, capacity building coalitions. I think that there will be 9 coalitions, and each country will be, each coalition will have his one country at its heads, and I think that this coalition will also has a task of coordinating the acquisition made within the SAFE in order to make these acquisitions more rational and more responding to our needs. And I think that we have also in Europe some very important armament programs. I will not tell about FCAS, the French-German future fighter, but I will tell about ELSA program. We have a very, very urgent need to replenish our capacities when it comes to long strike. So ELSA program is quite promising. We already have a missile. It's produced by the British, so it's out of the European Union, but it's a European project. And I hope that this initiative will be developed. Poland is part of this program. Germany, France, Great Britain and Italy. I don't see any reason why Ukraine couldn't join this initiative. Ukraine has a very extensive experience in building missiles back from Soviet times. Yes, so
thank you.
This one of them.
Thank you very much, Alexei. Where do you, from your perspective, you are working also very much with digitalization projects to modernize the army. Where do you see the needs for Ukraine, what Ukraine also needs in that direction, because we are speaking as a priority about the defense of Ukraine now, and where do you also see mutual benefits in that area?
Before answering that question, I want to appreciate that we are at a conference that, I don't know, years ago would not have had a defense panel on it, right? So I just want to appreciate that we are becoming defense first, knowingly or unknowingly, and I think this is the right direction to go into. Because the topics that were discussed today and yesterday, you could very easily add the word resilience, basically in every name of every panel. And in some of them, you can also add defense, right? Energy and defense go very well together. So I feel like this is also needed from both Ukraine and Germany. We need to talk about lessons. We need to talk about how to resist Russian aggression better. We need to talk about deficiencies in the systems in Germany and in Ukraine and how to fix them. And every conference has to have defense and resilience in it. So I just wanted to thank you for having defense panel in this conference. I'm sure, and I hope in the next ones you'll also have this focus. Now, the reason for that is because we will not have reconstruction if we will not win the war. And that's basically a transformation also that a lot of people have went through. So that's a key thing that I wanted to start with. Now, in terms of needs that you've discussed, this is basically there is an like abstract level and then the practical level. On an abstract level, we know that strengths and weaknesses of Germany and Ukraine in defense industrial complex, in defense and resilience are different. Therefore, we can be stronger together. We have lessons learned from the new war. Germany has army and the equipment built for decades with a different war in mind. So it's very clear that if we work together, we can get together better equipment, better tactics, better defense capability. As simple as that. And are we already using all the potential that we have, including with the EU programs? I'm not sure. That has to do with joint ventures, with export controls, with industry cooperation, not only with knowledge sharing. That's ongoing. So I think that's a big area where we could improve. Ukrainian companies, Ukrainian armed forces working together with German producers and German armed forces to come up with better equipment that will be immediately tested and used on the ground to help Ukraine defend itself, and also will feed into a better defense capability on the German side. So that's on an abstract level, I think this is where we are. On practical level, on pragmatic level, we've heard already about what's going on the front line. There is clearly capability that we still need. We need more ammunition, we need more drones, we need more interceptors and the air, you name it. I think there is ongoing communication between Ukrainian government and German government and also with various coalitions. I think that's going to be relevant also in this conference and in the future. Now, I think the last part is I think we need to also talk about what I've started with, how whole of society effort can translate into Germany, right? So in Ukraine, there is dozens and dozens of teams that were doing very civilian stuff before the large-scale invasion. And to a degree, Ukraine has been maximizing potential impact from all of these bright people working in defense to perhaps a larger extent that is on average in Europe, right? Where are the best people in Europe, in the European Union going to? Are they going to investment banks? I don't know, large companies, whatnot. So it's not. And it was also in Ukraine true. It was not very fashionable to focus on defense. I think it needs to change, and I'm sure Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung historically has not looked very focused into defense. And I think all think tanks, all organizations like that, all businesses, all banks need to ask themselves, what can we do to support defense resilience of Germany and of the EU? And yeah, if you ask Ukrainians on every topic that was listed today, there is a resilience and defense angle that can be talked about and can be improved upon.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good point, because that means that civil society, expert community in that area of defense and security also should have an ownership and also should be let into the decision-making processes. And I think that is actually the problem what we have still in Germany and in Western Europe, to really change a little bit the algorithm of that developments. I mean, is Mr. Mareshko still with us, or I do not? If the screen is black, maybe not. No? Okay, good. Then, because then I take that question later, and will again, Julia, I would like to ask you about a very concrete thing to finish that aspect here. What is at the moment for Ukraine more important? Is it, and where are still also the steps which have to be done? I speak about intellectual property. It is about R&D, so research and development. When it comes to production of military capabilities by foreign companies in Ukraine, yeah, on the one side, or what we also see starting already with 1 or 2 countries, Ukrainian production of weapons on the territory of the partner states. I mean, can you a little bit elaborate on that, what here we have to take into account?
Thank you for that question, and I will come back to the industry and manufacturing, but I want to highlight on the points that Alexei was doing regarding the basically blurring the line between civilians and military in Ukraine, and having the strong impact of the Ukrainian expert and civil society onto the defense reforms. I think that's something that our European partners, EU partners, should look at as the core component to the resilience of the societies. And that's a really special thing about Ukrainian defense ecosystem, because traditionally defense has been seen as like Ministry of Defense and armed forces, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why Ukraine was given 3 days, because if the professional experts were assessing Ukrainian defense, they were assessing how strong is MOD and institutionally, which it wasn't strong, and how strong is the armed forces, and that was assessed. But the strengths of the Ukrainian civil society was never assessed, and basically all that work united, the joint effort of the Ukrainian civilian and military component, that what keeps us alive on one hand, and allows us to develop, of course, with the support of the international community. Coming back to the industry and manufacturing, so the main problem for Ukraine, main problems, they have more structural character. So it's not like a single reform that should be done. There is a list of reforms that should be done, but there are like 2 main structural components that I can highlight in terms of the Ukrainian side. First, it's the lack of capital. So we are hearing a lot about the investment into the Ukrainian defense, but if we are then checking the numbers, these numbers would be peanuts. That would be like less than the one round of the IT companies, even like some big Ukrainian IT companies. So it's like hundreds of millions, which is totally not enough if we are talking about the development of the defense industry. And it's understandable for the investment country of war is it's not the most tempting investment target. But then another part of this structural problem is that for the most EU programs that were mentioned, Ukraine is not the equal participant of these programs. So we can be brought by other nations, but we cannot initiate and we cannot participate equally. So that's also blocking the capital flow and blocking possibilities for the Ukrainian defense industry to develop. And I think that all of that has like a bigger aspect onto it. Ukraine is still not seen as the equal partner of the EU and European defense. So Alexei is totally right. We are becoming one of the strongest armies in the world. Another one, unfortunately, is Russian and other authoritarian regimes' armies. So yeah, I think that's the question of changing the mindset and seeing Ukraine as an equal partner in this process, the equal partner in the European defense, the equal partner in the manufacturing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do, and I think that is very important to really realize that we're sitting in one boat, that Ukraine with NATO or without NATO should be already together in the team within at least the European community. But is it also when it comes to production, for example?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Maybe you want to finish something.
Yeah, I want to finish that on the European production. So we are working closely with the European defense companies, not only EU, UK, also US, and like producing equipment, producing weapons currently without close integration with the battlefield, which means with the Ukrainian army or government, is actually bringing to the result when the weapons which has been produced far away from the front line is like 50% effective. And yes, as the nation that has been provided a lot of different equipment by different nations, sometimes we are getting the equipment which is not showing the effectiveness at the front line, like the best effectiveness at the front line, because it was produced and the R&D was done somewhere far away. And I think the risks for the programs that were named, the EU defense programs, are that a lot of budgets, like billions, would be spent on the equipment which will not be relevant for the future war.
And does it also mean, and maybe Alexei also on that, we need also to have research, and so if we do produce with Ukraine, in Ukraine, we also need to have a research and development aspect, I think, and we have also to have that institutional framework, yes, but would that mean not also that we need to have experts and instructors in Ukraine itself, near to the front? I think that is an important thing, because sometimes I have the feeling that is only something for the security guarantees later. So can you a little bit elaborate, is there already something going on? Are nations already engaged in Ukraine, near to the front, near to the centers where the war is going on?
Yeah, so to continue, security and defense is not a result, it's not a state even, it's a process. And therefore you cannot buy security. You cannot go into, I don't know, a defense company and then buy a tank and then now you're secure. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And what I mean by process is that, and what Yuda said, if you buy the best drones, cutting edge, I don't know, most effective on the front line today, and you're going to put them in a warehouse here in Berlin and wait for 5 years, you can as well throw them away, because in 5 years you'll need different drones, because it's a process. The speed of innovation is so fast that it's now basically useless to think about defense capabilities in terms of a physical object, even if it's the best physical object in the world. And now what comes into the process? Yes, testing, feedback from the battlefield, training, changes, constant changes, and etc. So in this sense, when we previously were talking about importing and exporting weapons, we're now importing and exporting security. And if Ukraine was a net importer of security at some point, we will be exporting security, and arguably we're already exporting security to our allies in terms of knowledge and different other stuff. Now, can we export security also with physical objects? Yes, obviously, and that will mean also exporting the processes around the physical objects, the training, the digital systems, the drones, the producer teams, whatnot. And for that, we need some regulatory changes and political changes to go forward. And arguably, there is some way forward of integrating together European defense industry and regulation with Ukrainian defense industry and regulation, because we still have export controls between EU and Ukraine, both for dual use and for military purposes. So you can export something, a drone from Germany to Poland without, if it's dual use, without a license, and if you want to export it from Germany to Ukraine and vice versa, you need to have it, which is strange, right? So if we are allies and integrating to such a large extent, we should be working together, and we should be codependent and co-integrated, because this way we can maximize the potential of, you know, in business it's called value creation. In this case, it's security creation.
Thank you very much. Łukasz, I would like to discuss with you a certain dilemma we maybe face. Faced with the Russian threat, NATO's European partners must now strengthen their eastern flank, yeah, and under time pressure, because maybe we have only 2 years. Yes, some say until 29. I would say the next 2 years, actually, when we are still weak, is very important. For example, one very important topic is to establish now a multi-layered anti-drone defense system on the eastern flank. Partners are very interested now in the Ukrainian innovations, actually what is going now on with the interceptor drones. But we know that Ukraine is also in need of that own production very much. Ukraine is also in need to train and to have specialist operators who can manage these drones. It's not only the drone, it is also an ecosystem you need here. And on the other hand, we have countries like Finland who already have some defense system made in cooperation with Ukrainians, in permanent cooperation with Ukraine. So seeing that dilemma, that the priority at the moment has to be Ukraine, because Ukraine is keeping our eastern flank at the moment on the one hand. On the other hand, we also need to build up that, because we see the hybrid attacks of Russia into NATO countries, actually in Poland. Yes, we need to be capable, ready, and credible, but we can only do it if we have these capabilities. So what can we realistically do with Ukraine at the moment to incorporate that knowledge and innovations into our defense, into the defense in Europe, in the other European countries?
Yes, I think that we can, as NATO EU members, make some purchases at the Ukrainian defense industry. For example, some drone technologies, exchange of experience, training, also better cooperation on the border. Poland is the only EU and NATO country that has common border with Ukraine, with Belarus, and with Russia. So we are in quite specific situation. We are an important hub via which aid to Ukraine is delivered, but we are also very exposed to acts of sabotage made by Russian Belarusian agents on our territory. And this creates difficult dilemmas, and social moods in Poland are also changing, not for the better way for Ukraine, because not because Poles are becoming pro-Russian, no, because Poles are afraid of Russia and think that it's time to prioritize our own defense. So the defense on the Baltic line, defense with Kaliningrad and with Belarus. And as far as Ukraine is fighting, we don't expect Russian invasion, honestly. So we should prepare, we should increase the pace of production of our defense industry. But as you rightly mentioned, Ukraine is defending Europe because Putin isn't able to make another big-scale invasion while fighting Ukraine. So, of course, every additional support for Ukraine is also investment in our own defense. And the problem for us is also we cannot figure out how situation will look like in next year. So will we have a ceasefire? The war will continue, because if there will be a ceasefire, potentially it creates momentum for Putin to destabilize another region, for example, Baltic region, or Finland or Poland, or maybe Kazakhstan. We don't know what Putin will do, but we know that he needs war for maintaining his leadership. So yes, this creates a lot of dilemmas. So we must do both. We must continue our aid to Ukraine. So now European Union is seeking money. Ukraine needs 135 billion euros for the next 2 years, and member states have to decide what to do. And we have to develop our initiatives. Poland, Baltic states, and Finland are already developing defense systems on the border. European Commission proposed 2 initiatives, Eastern Flank Watch and Drone Wall. And I must say you honestly that these initiatives weren't met enthusiastically by member states, including Germany and France. So this was the initiative of Commissioner Kubilius, supported by von der Leyen after the incident with drones in Poland. But the reaction of the biggest European countries wasn't very enthusiastic. So we have to also discuss further in Europe this matter.
Okay. Thank you very much. Julia, maybe on that, how do you see that? Yeah, so that we, on the one hand,
I
should benefit but not damage Ukraine in its own defense capacities.
Yeah. So to start this anti-drone conversation, I want to highlight that Ukraine was asking European Union and talking to the EU nations about creation of the joint air defense shield, which will protect the at least western territories of Ukraine and the critical infrastructure, and will give a possibility to the weapons producers on the western Ukraine at least to be protected. So my team was part of those who were advocating this concept. And even conceptually hearing about creating of the drone wall on the border of the EU, you know, instead of drone shield, together with Ukraine, is kind of also showing the mindset and is not putting us into better place of partnership and cooperation. So, but then if we are talking from the military and practical perspective, when you're stopping the Shahed, and we Ukrainians, we know it very well in this audience, that if you want to stop the drone, it's better not to do it over your head. It's better to do it somewhere far away. So basically, Ukraine is proposing to Poland to have, and other EU nations, to have a huge territory where these threats can be stopped instead of being stopped at their border, EU border. So that's the first point. So maybe instead of thinking about drone wall, let's think about joint defense between Ukraine and European Union. And Ukraine is ready to provide the best tactics, which I would remember are changing every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, Russia is sending new drone with new technical characteristics, new engines, new cameras, new ways of navigation. So if you think that you will buy like 1,000 interceptors and put it on your warfare, as Alexei was mentioning, and it will protect your country next year, it won't. So we are coming to the second point, that even the conversations about like let's send Ukrainian trainers to train AD experts somewhere like in Poland or like Denmark or somewhere, it is not totally relevant if we are talking about getting the defense capability. Like real defense, air defense capability would be built by a partner nation just in cooperation with Ukraine and by sending by sending the personnel to Ukraine, to the command points, sitting there, learning the tactics, and changing the approach and building the defense capability together.
Thank you very much. I think that is also very important when we speak about all these startups, yes, in Ukraine, which are very innovative, producing now different types of drones. I understand you correctly if it is better made if you really know if you not only can support that startup, but also support the ecosystem of the startup and to be present in contact with the brigade. So that is the whole system you have to build up, and I think that's a very important point. Thank you so much, Alexei, and to all. Maybe to finish our panel discussion, I have to address that. I mean, at first, I think when we speak about defense, I now will speak a little bit also about on institutional reforms in the defense system in Ukraine. But when we speak about defense, we can already say here that you can play an important role, you as a bridge between civil society and stakeholders. I think that's all in all an interesting institution, your reform office. And Alexei also as someone who is very close working with the sector, but also with the private business and all these things. So I think at first we can already say you are also enablers of cooperation. You can also give advice to whom we should address our support or our needs or something like that. Another thing is, I think what is also very important in that day is that Ukrainian civil society and actually also your reform office, which is also as a result of the development since Maidan, very contributed to transparency, to efficiency. You also spoke about procurement, good governance. And given the recent corruption scandals, could that approach to strengthen a civic democratic oversight also in the defense sector, could that be something, because I would like to underline that scandals were not happening in the defense sector, it was the energy sector. But nevertheless, it damaged also the trust, maybe in some partner states, yes. I mean, I think in Germany it's quite stable. They actually upscaled the budget for Ukraine military support actually in that time. But could that be a smart approach to strengthen the trust? That is to you the question. And what the partners should do, I mean, we already, the European Union already supports civil society in the classical civic reform areas. But what could be done by partners like Germany to strengthen that factor? Maybe Alexei first, and I come also back then to Lukasz.
Now, I think that we need to add a bit of background, right? Before the large-scale invasion, Russians spent tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars to capture and corrupt elites around the world, including in Ukraine. And in Ukraine was high on the priority list of the Russians. So the anti-corruption institutions in Ukraine have also a security role because they are helping protect Ukrainian institutions from Russian influence by fighting corruption, because corruption was an instrument of choice for Russian Federation as a hybrid war instrument. And they've used it against our allies in Europe and elsewhere. So I've sat in a conference when people were presenting research about exactly how Russians are doing it, like with case studies, with money laundering analysis, that kind of stuff. So it's a thing. It's a field to look into, also to get lessons on how to protect your country against such kind of influence operations. Now, having that in the background, the scandals, the corruption scandals that pop up in Ukraine, there is a very simple comparison, which is comparison to non-democratic regimes. There is normally no corruption scandals there, normally no good anti-corruption institutions there. So to a degree, of course, I'm not going to be protecting everything what happened, but to a degree, the scandals are a symptom of the system working, because if the system was not working, there would be no scandals, right? And I think the anti-corruption institutions are doing tremendous work, uprooting Russia, and the scandal in energy is also connected to Andriy Derkach, who is a Russian operative who was building basically spy networks in Ukraine. So I'm sure there are corruption scandals without Russian influence in Ukraine, but this particular one is definitely connected to Russia. And Energoatom was for a long time also captured by Russian influence. So I think it's a good symptom. Now you're asking, what about spillover effects? Like what's going to happen to defense? And I personally was not asked a lot during this week about this, but other members of civil society and I'm sure were asked a lot. I know that from them directly. And in terms of the risk, I think the risk of losing the trust is there, and they think everyone is watching very closely what happens next. Are there? So I think today there was already dismissals of 2 ministers already in the parliament that were in the tapes, and there is also consultations and very, very democratic and sometimes heated political discussions on what else needs to happen for Ukraine to solve, to address the deficits that were found during those anti-corruption probes.
Łukasz, how you see that from the European perspective or from the Polish perspective?
So the European Union has its own anti-corruption institution. There is the office of the prosecutor, EU prosecutor, which can be also engaged when it comes about European money that is given to Ukraine. Maybe this office should be given to some possibility of acting directly in Ukraine, together with Ukrainian anti-corruption authorities, because this would be a kind of limitation of sovereignty. But if we are talking about large sum of money that are being transferred from Europe to Ukraine, so the EU citizen can ask what's going on with this money then. So maybe such kind of limitation of sovereignty for Ukraine would be acceptable in the name of the more transparency, especially if we will have presidential elections in France in 2027, next elections in Bundestag, and what will be the result of these elections and what impact will have this result on the help for Ukraine. This is a drastic idea, but it's one of the ideas that can be discussed. And Secondly, I think that corruption has also a direct impact on the performance of Ukrainian army. I think that some losses on the south could have been avoided in 22 if the local elites weren't corrupted by Russia. And Ukraine, Southern Front would be in better situation now. So yeah, it's really important and it had this direct impact, but as a Pole, I wouldn't like to preach too much about the situation in other countries. So it's up to Ukrainian to choose. And I would like also that more Ukrainians abroad, in Poland, in Germany, would be as active as you are and as engaged in the affairs of your country as you are here. But unfortunately, it's not the rule, and Chancellor Merz said something about that a few days ago.
Yeah, Julia, I think it is possible, yes, that actually Ukrainian civil society, together with the state institutions, provides for that, I think. So you said institutional reform for overcoming governance lacks is not in a contradiction to security. And I think we can say you are, because I would not to burden Ukraine again with new benchmarks, yes, from European unions in the war. So if you got more support for bringing that component in, we could also, on Ukrainian basis, have enough control for the processes that money is come to the right end.
Yeah. So first of all, reacting to your point on this corruption case, of course, it's unacceptable for the wartime, and the reaction must be strong on all levels. Then coming back on the reforms and in the defense sector. So the reforms process that is happening in the defense sector, even though we are currently at the active warfare, is the most dynamic process of reforms that ever happened in the defense sector in Ukraine. So we are rebuilding plane while we are flying at that plane. The defense sector is changing very rapidly. So the role of the international community that can be enhanced is to stop being afraid of the word defense, security, and military in the projects. So even having meeting like that and discussing defense and army and military and not being scared of doing that, that's a good thing. Because it's still pretty hard to work with some partners on the defense topics. So we could say that the sustainable support that was happening in this area was coming mostly from the UK side. The EU was standing behind in terms of the support of the civilian sector in the defense and staying behind to support the defense reforms overall. So just like this year, some countries, some allies are starting to look at this direction. And then coming back to the question, if that would be helpful, yes, that would be helpful because Ukrainian formula to the reforms is Ukrainian civil society with international partners, sometimes private sector and academia, pushing government into the right direction, and it works. So that's actually proven with the anti-corruption sector. So yes, we have a horrible case of corruption, but then it's an anti-corruption institution that was built in this synergy, proves that it works. So the guy who is running it is my deputy from Odessa Customs. So Simon Kryvanis, we are working closely with him, where he was helping me to clean up seaports of the Ukrainian Black Sea pretty successfully. So now the Anti-Corruption Bureau is showing the results of its work. It's an institution that proves that it's capable. We have to build the same capable institutions in the defense, because as we understood, future of the EU defense, either it's wanted or not, it will be together with Ukraine. And Ukraine is becoming a security provider for the region. And to become this security provider, this strong security provider, we need sustainable defense institutions. And in Ukraine, institutions are being built in the close cooperation with the experts, civil society, international partners, private sector, academia, and others. So we have this defense ecosystem that should be supported, and it will drive and is already driving the crucial reforms.
Thank you very much, Julia. And I think actually the defense sector already proved that we have the instrument to tackle these problems, yes. And having said that and having addressed that, I also would like to underline that nevertheless, these things are a separate problem to defense of Ukraine, because it is about a war which is unproportional without any rules, and it could not put in one package, yeah, these two things. I think the support, of course, for Ukraine has to be independent from problems we will have also in future, because the process with the accession is a big thing. Ukraine has made progress, and it should not damage at all the support. I think that's also very important to know. We should not mix up that. But I think your signals were good, and you told us, all of you told us how we have to address that problem. Now we have maybe questions in the... Yeah, and you can maybe, if I would like to ask you to introduce yourself shortly and to tell me to whom you address your question. Okay, please. Achso, Bruno. Doesn't work, or
another microphone? Oh, now it's working.
Now it's working. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Christoph Müller. I have a YouTube channel. It's called Talk for Ukraine, and I would like to address either to Julia or Alexei the following question. Alexandra, in the beginning, from the Rada, he said that the solution to the war, to finish the war, would be an immediate membership of NATO, of Ukraine into NATO, and the second best solution would be a quick membership into the European Union, because Putin is afraid of these institutions and the military power of those of us. And that's why as I see it, he is trying with all means to dissolve and to destroy our institutions. And so time is also a very important issue. And that's why my question, how can we, and as I also say, those organizations, they are very old and very big and very, very unflexible. And it is not so easy to become quickly a member into those institutions, as you see. So my question is, how can you first, what would be the best thing to do? To get quickly into the European Union or NATO? Or secondly, to make another organization on your own? Because also you mentioned that Ukraine is the strongest army, military in Europe, with the quickest way of research and development and so on. And so wouldn't it be a good idea to make a known security organization with the leadership of Ukraine, and let us, the European Union, become members in those, because time is quick? So I will ask Julia for that.
Okay, thank you, but we will collect maybe a few questions, yes? I know you have to, okay, then I take two more questions, because maybe, and actually to Julia, please. You was first, and then you, I think, and then there were two also. Yeah, please begin.
Hello. May I ask in Ukrainian? It will be easier for me. Моє питання щодо іншого.
I have a question regarding a different aspect of the safety. It's demining. We know that Ukraine is the most mined territory in the world, and we need a lot of time to demine the territory. And it would be interesting for me to know which experience you have. Are there any negotiations or initiatives how EU supports Ukraine? Another question, and if possible, to Julia. Maybe you, I'm not sure who of you was first. Matthias Brückmann.
I'm active in the partnership between Berlin-Pankow and the city of Rivne, and in a journalist network called Recover Ukraine. I just recently have been to Ukraine and spoke to drone producers. They told us it's not possible for Ukrainian companies to export, and it's even not possible to exchange technology. Is it right? I see it's right, okay. And the second question would be, you said local commanders are allowed to buy techniques or drones or what else for their need. How do you exclude that they are buying something which is produced by their friends and by companies they know and they're getting kickbacks? Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have a short question to Julia, and then Julia makes a wrap up of...
Yeah, Darya Melling, Center for Liberal Modernity. One short question. How does the Build with Ukraine initiative and joint ventures work in Germany, whether it is successful, and if you have any recommendations that we can communicate further to the decision makers in Berlin, please, we'll be happy to hear them. Another question, very short. We know that Denmark announced in April they will train their own soldiers in unit unarmed in Ukraine. Maybe some other countries do it, but not that vocal as Denmark. Are there any conversations about it in Germany for German units being trained in Ukraine, not for Ukrainian soldiers? And if also you have any recommendations how to communicate it, we're open to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much for your questions. So I will take the one on the NATO integration and on the decentralized procurement, and then on demining and joint ventures, and probably I'll train into demining and joint ventures will be on Alexei, as it's more of his topic. So on strategic allies and building the coalitions. So definitely EU and NATO integration is a first priority to Ukraine. NATO integration is in our constitution, so there is no other way for us. So it's not something that is discussable in our society. It currently has a huge support population, and probably as a respected blogger, you know that. So I'm also grateful for your work to promote what's happening in Ukraine and to talk about that wider. About building our own coalitions led by Ukraine, that's a great approach, very it puts Ukraine in the right place, and it is possible. And I know there are some conversations happening on this topic internally also, but from my point of view, it is very important to do the steps together with the institutional development in Ukraine. So to lead coalitions like that, it also takes, it puts a burden on the government, which is currently at war in a very reactive situation to the needs of the front line, not in the best circumstances. So to develop internal capacity to lead coalitions like that would be an important part of the effort. But overall, I think it's a good idea, and I know there are some conversations and thoughts are happening about Nordics and so on. Regarding the decentralized procurement and anti-corruption tools and monitoring over there. So first of all, if the brigade commander is buying something that was produced by someone he knows, if it's effective at the front line, and if it's bought through the competitive procurement procedure, which is currently implemented in the brigades, then it's not a problem. So, also take into account that the brigades, they have to, that's not something that they are buying for their warehouse. That's something that their comrades, that the soldiers of this brigade will be fighting the next day with. So the feedback from the brigade, I think, would be immediate if the brigade commander would order to buy something which is not effective at the front line, because everyone knows what are the most effective drones. If someone would buy crap on a high price, the payment for that would be human lives. So the amount of pressure which exists, you have to put it to take it into account too. But together with this pressure, there is a traditional structure of the controlling services. So there is also all the regular anti-corruption mechanisms are applicable to the decentralized procurement. So police, special security service, like prosecutor's office, so everyone has a power to control and monitor what's happening at the decentralized procurement. It doesn't have any protection towards this monitoring and controlling tools. Also, currently, we are discussing in MOD creating a digital monitoring tool. And in the dot chain, it's already created, where you can basically see where what is being procured by every brigade. And if you see an anomaly in the system, then this anomaly is communicated to the controlling services. So, for example, if all the brigades are buying like this type of drones, and then only one brigade is buying something like for more expensive prices and like different types of drones, then it's an anomaly, and the controlling services has to react on it. So that's the system that we are currently building when there is a data exchange. Taking the training question, that's fantastic that Denmark is doing it. I don't know if Germany is planning to do anything like that, but we think that that's the best way how the EU nations can train their armed forces, is to send their representatives to Ukraine to get the first-hand experience from our instructors. And thank you for brilliant questions and for the brilliant conference. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Now I let you go. Thank you. So, and maybe, Alexei, you can complete, and I also will have a follow-up question on that questions to Lukasz, and then we take the other questions. Alexei.
I'll try to be brief. So on NATO, Alexander, like me, is a lawyer, and of course lawyers can tell you about what legally has to happen for the country to do something, but don't listen to lawyers, right? NATO or Germany or Poland can shoot down Russian drones in the airspace of Ukraine today without the need of NATO, EU, and anything. So the Russians are not following any rules. It's their doctrine to escalate, to de-escalate. They're a bully. So as long as other countries will try to play nicely with Russians, they will continue being bullies. So yeah, and on the legal side, I think I cannot add anything. I don't think legal side is the blocker here. It's the political side. Now on other issues, yes, export of dual-use technologies, military technologies, and military articles, so equipment, is not happening right now in Ukraine. And it is through initiatives like Build with Ukraine that it is planned to lift those restrictions. And from what I know, Germany is, of course, widely discussed to be part of the Build with Ukraine initiative. Now, legally, there's been some changes and some, like Defense City law that's been signed to simplify some of the procedures around exports. But yes, there is homework on Ukrainian side to make it possible legally to do joint ventures and export of technologies and export of drones and other material. I hoped that it will be done until end of year, but with the recent events, I don't know, maybe that will delay
Yes, but that would mean also for us that we should better finance, as Julia said, the capacities in Ukraine, because you have to upscale then for the export. I mean, it should not damage Ukrainians' capacity building for their own defense against Russia.
I disagree.
Okay.
According to our research, and this has also been confirmed by research of other organizations, there is a 50% underutilized production capacity already with drone and other technological weapon producers in Ukraine. So what it means is that if there would have been twice as much money flowing into those companies, that would produce twice as many drones and other equipment. Now, if we don't have enough funding to use all the production capacity of those companies, we're leaving some production on the table, and there are like discussed protections against drones being diverted from the front line to exports. And in a lot of countries there is a mechanism in contracts, in export contracts, that if the armed forces really need something, they can go first in line. And so there are ways of protecting the interests of the armed forces.
Thank you very much. Łukasz, maybe shortly also on what you heard. Is it really a good idea to have a new organization led by Ukrainian security, or should it be more about a core group of willing states which is going? How do you see that question?
No, I don't think we need a new organization. I think we should stick to NATO as a defensive alliance, even if the US is less engaged in NATO. NATO is an organization that has its own bureaucracy, its own structures, its own plans. So everybody in NATO knows what he should do in the case of a war. This is very important. And it's not necessary to build new military alliance. The EU has its own role in developing our own defense. It's mainly economical, supporting defense industry, military mobility, and is also a sphere where Ukraine should be engaged, because this would make easier also further help for Ukraine. I agree that we should further discuss the idea of air shield over Ukraine. I don't agree with making a taboo of this topic. I think we are talking too much about fear of escalation, about Russian reaction, and we are talking too less about technical aspects of this idea, which are difficult to implement. But this is the topic of the discussion we should have in front of us, how to implement this idea. But I think that at least part of the territory of Ukraine should be and could be protected by NATO air forces, NATO air defense. And this would also make many things easier for Ukrainians. For example, some Ukrainian airports could operate, civil airports, Lviv, Uzhhorod, I don't know. This would be good, quite huge help for Ukrainian economy, if this were possible. And I also reply for the question on demining.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, in 22, European Union allocated about 100 million euros for the demining, but you can demine the territory you have liberated. So the territories when the fights are going on are not being demined, because the mines are part of your defense. So this will be a very difficult topic if there is a ceasefire, and I think that all international community, maybe not within the EU but within the UN, could be engaged. I think that, for example, Gulf countries would be interested in financing initiatives like it's being done in Yugoslavia till today. In Bosnia till today, the operation of demining are being carried on, and this will be a very, very huge challenge.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the last questions. There was a question.
Sorry, can I add on demining very quickly?
Yeah, okay, of course, Alexei.
On demining, there's been a change in regulation, because under the old standards, it would basically take forever. So now there is dozens of private operators for demining services. We helped change the regulations. And also there is funding made available from the state budget, also with the support of international partners, providing macrofinancial support, but a program where the government pays to those providers for demining.
Thank you very much. Please, I think, yes, is there any other question? Because I would, after the next questions, I would close the panel. Okay, please.
I'm Eva Christoph, former member of the European Parliament, and I'm since 20 years with the Kyiv talks, but today I didn't join you. And the reason is I thought maybe a form of my solidarity could be that I go to the conference of the arms industry and of the Bundeswehr. So I have not a question, but I have something what I learned there is that René Obermann, he is not my friend, but he is the head of Airbus, and he gave from my view, a very pragmatic, very clear speech linked with all what we have debating here now the last hour. And I think you should try to get the speech or to try and to get in contact with his team, because it seems that he has traveled to Ukraine, that he's very interested in the startups, the arms and defense startups in Ukraine, and that he has some ideas how Germany, the German army, German politics, and some other EU politics have to change to be quick enough and pragmatic enough. So that is one of my proposals to go in it. And the question which Julia could better answer is, there was another panel there on gender equality related to the UN resolution 1325. I don't know, 2 weeks ago, we celebrated this year's Böll Foundation, but nobody made a link today. My idea is that using this question of gender equality and gender and peace and security, maybe that could be a help for anti-corruption. So what do you think about that? You could, if you the more equality, gender equality you have in the army and the arms industry, maybe less corruption.
Interesting thought. I give it to you.
Well, in general, I agree. I could give my thoughts on this, but not sure. So, like, the way I think about this is that obviously before the large-scale invasion, and to a degree right now, the army was a male-dominated system, with the culture, right, to go along with it, and that is changing. Maybe some were faster, some were slower, but that is clearly changing. A lot of women are now in the army, in MOD. There is at all levels, right? I'm sure we can find also a brigade chief. That's yeah, and in terms of also deputy minister level as well. Now, in terms of the theoretical basis for that statement, I would think that whenever there are unclear rules, whenever there is like a closed culture, there is a larger chance of corruption, and that is obviously disrupted by changing this closed culture by balancing it, by arriving at a gender equality, because obviously the old practices will not be able to survive if you look at this as insiders and outsiders, when outsiders become insiders, right? To put it this way. So that's basically, to a degree, what we did in other areas of the economy, when we streamlined processes, remove barriers, digitize things, it decreases this unclear culture of when there are no clear rules, you have to informally agree on something to make sure this works, and formally it's unclear how to do it. So I think that's also a direction that we're going to.
Thank you very much. Łukasz, would you like to add something?
I think that the precondition of a real equality among sexes is not to idealize nor of the sexes, nor women, nor men. So I don't observe the Ukrainian political life, but I know something about Russia, and I know that in Russia, women are also part of corruption schemes. In Poland also, I can imagine women who are arrested for corruption. But there is a problem of masculinity and traditional masculinity in post-communist and post-Soviet societies. This has something in common with prison culture, subculture that is present in post-Soviet societies. It's very visible in Russia. I'm not sure about Ukraine. In Poland, not so much. But the legacy of the sex equality that was preached by communists was a bit neglected after the fall of the Soviet Union, both in post-Soviet as in post-communist countries like Poland.
Thank you very much. I mean, I would like to add only the facts, yes, that what you said is, I think, important, but what we see is that Julia Maruszewska is leading the defense of support. Lesia Ochrysko has founded the Zahajdaczny Center, also working with them. Lesia Orobec is engaged in the Sky Shield initiative. So we have many women which take not the initiative and take the lead immediately. So even without maybe looking at the resolutions, they simply do it. And the second point is, but you are right, the second point is, of course, and I think that is an issue where Ukraine is also exchanging with Israel and Germany, that is how to include better women in the armed forces. Because we know that Ukraine has an army with 20%, I think, women, part of them also fighting on the front. And I think that is, of course, something, but that is also work in progress. I mean, I would say that also given the experience of war, we also have something to take maybe from Ukrainian experience, how to integrate women and how to make the environment better for them, because that's an issue. That's an issue, of course. But it is, I think, nothing exposed as an exposed problem. It is something you have to deal with, and of course you have also to give support here. Thank you all. Thank you all for very much. Actually, very much thanks to the panelists. It was really great. Also, I would like to thank in absence Mr. Mereshko, because he very on short notice confirmed his participation. We have a budget plenary session in Ukraine at the moment, so it's very difficult to get the people from the Committee of Defense, which we had invited, but they could in the end not confirm for so many going on in that week in Ukraine. But that shows also that the head of the Committee of Foreign Policy is last minute confirming. I think that's very nice, and it shows us that our relations are already have improved, that we have red channels established. And thank you all for your nice inputs, for your great questions, for your patience, and for your discussions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, dear friends, colleagues, we are closing our conference, Kyiv Dialogue, the 20th annual conference. Thank you very much also, again, Wilfried, for moderating this very important panel. We had a conference which was covering the very broad security notion, and security is broader than it used to be before. It comes from local democracy over information and what we discussed here. So we have to understand that we have to change our perception of security in this hybrid war, and to understand it broader. So I took very much impulses from the whole conference, and especially also from the last discussion. Thank you for that. I want to add my gratitude to the whole team of the Kyiv Dialogue, very much to the comms team, Lilia Zanchadikova and Matthias Meyer. Please have a look at our new website. Thank you for that. It's new impulses with a good design, and I like it very much. It a little bit symbolizes the coexistence between defense and civil life in this statute that we copied here. Also, a big thanks to the translators again. We have more translators today than 20 years ago. And big thanks also to the whole team which was engaged in organizing this conference from the European Exchange. Valeria Moiseyeva. Valeria, thank you very much. It was so much on her, so big applause. big applause to Valeria. And so I hope we meet again next year, and we have lots ahead, and we will work on that all together with you. Thank you very much.